Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with this nerd.
Nerdarchy is Ted.
And our series, Why 5th Edition Dungeons & Dragons Needs Eberron, continues. This time we're talking The Last War.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with Nerdarchy.
We're finishing up our series on why 5th Edition Dungeons & Dragons needs Eberron. And that brings us to The Last War. It's a huge part of what has transpired in the world, the history of the world, and the campaign moving forward. The reason why it's so important is it's fresh, it's recent. It just happened when the Eberron campaign actually begins, if you're going by the campaign setting from 3.5.
Right.
Now it's been a while since that book's come out, and who knows if they do a 5th edition where they're gonna start.
Right.
But if they kind of just pick it up where it was, and do like a reboot, which wouldn't be a terrible thing considering it's a new edition.
Right. So the options, as I see it, is you literally say, okay, well, there's no need to change the world. It was already rich. It was already beautiful as it was. Let's put your campaign in Eberron and put it where it's supposed to be, and that's right at the beginning. And the beginning is 2 years after this battle, this war that lasted for more than 100 years. And when you're talking about humans dominating most fantasy worlds, that's an average of 4 to 5 generations worth of humans fighting. So it goes beyond their memory. Now, yeah, elves and dwarves and these other long-lived races, they have the ability to see, oh, well, this is a minor thing, to a creature that lives 100 years, it lives 1,000 years, but that's not the populace. That's not the main majority of the world.
Well, even an elf that lives 1,000 years, that's a tenth of their life, where if they've been living in this area that's been wrapped up in one war, pretty much. So Gallifrey is the kingdom, and I believe it was also the name of the king, and he had 5 children that all had their own kingdoms within.
Right.
So, nations within the kingdom. So 5 nations, 1 kingdom. Well, what happens is when he passes, there's no clear path of succession, or there's a fight for succession, and all 5 nations vie for control. They want the throne.
Right.
So for 100 years, they're fighting over who should get the throne. Well, when it's all said and done, the Treaty of Thronehold gets signed. Everyone's had enough of war. I guess we should talk a little bit what the catalyst for that is.
So first and foremost, the 5 nations have been severely fragmented because, when you're fighting for that long, generations amongst humans, politico and non-politico alike, there's going to be alliances and breaking of alliances. So those 5 nations actually wind up being 12 that sign the Treaty of Thronehold.
And there's literally more than that. Those are just the recognized ones, right?
Right.
Because if you watch the rest of our series, we actually talk about some of the other ones, like Jerome, who petitioned to be recognized, but they were turned down.
Right.
But they're still there, whether you like it or not. But even before the Treaty of Thronehold, there was also lands were being taken, retaken, and things like this were happening. So that also began the splintering of the nations and breaking off pieces, right? You had that going on. Well, the catalyst for the actual Treaty of Thronehold, though, was the Day of Mourning.
Right.
That's the destruction of Seer, the creation of the Mournlands. And the Mournlands is basically this badass, post-apocalyptic, no man's land. It's shrouded in fog. Weird magic works weirdly there. I believe healing doesn't actually work in the Mournlands. There's bodies laying there still years later. They haven't decomposed. The wounds still are fresh, but life has long since fled. And they never tell you what happened on the Day of Mourning. They never tell you what happened in Seer. So it's kind of like this dead city that you could explore if you can make it through the Mournlands, which are crazy dangerous.
Right.
Which it's rumored that the Lord of Blades is hiding out there and has his own mobile city that walks around the Mournlands, So like is another totally like either threat if you're looking at our threats video, or possibly Warforged Nation, depending on how you want to look at it.
Right.
But either way, like this one event really is what made everyone stop. It made everyone stop fighting because they're like, oh my god, what
did we
happened?
do?
Yeah.
And the great part about that day of mourning is it's open to interpretation, and each game master that wants to actually investigate and go into that thing, it allows you to be like, okay, well, let me be creative. What happened? Was it a magical assault? Was it a plague? What caused this to happen? Did the gods intervene or not? It's
Was Seer creating a weapon and they went wrong? Did someone else create a weapon and used it on Seer?
right.
Like so there's all these unanswered questions. The only thing that anyone really knows is they don't want it to happen again.
Right.
So it was the thing that made everyone take a pause, take a breath, and talk, and come to the negotiating table and talk. It ended the war.
Right. And then each of the nations that are out there, they're trying to deal with what actually transpired during the war. So Karnath, who was like proud and strong military, they were desperate to prove themselves and desperate to claim the throne, that they actually went to unholy powers and actually started using necromancy and the undead to gain favor and to win battles. So now those who actually hold true to the name, like, they want to try and restore their honor, even though there's these reputations out there of like, oh man, this is what you did for a long time.
Yeah, you got that going on. You have Thrain is now kind of like a theocracy. At the end of the thing, because the Silver Flame is basically infiltrated everywhere is over there. So you have all these different nations that have a very different feel to them now, and everything's splintered, everything's divided, and the whole world kind of has this almost like this Cold War feel to it. So there is a lot of opportunities if you wanted to run like an espionage type game, or you could do a whole campaign around trying to figure out what happened in Seer on the day of mourning. Because of the day of mourning, and you have the Mournlands, you could literally run like a scavenger type campaign where all the players do is make forays into the Mournlands to try and retrieve lost goods and stuff like that.
I mean, and they could be hired or contracted by the refugees from Sire to be like, look, there's this item that doesn't hold any significance to anyone else, but it was meaningful to me. But I'll tell you where something of value is if you go get this.
Well, speaking of that, Seer, like that's a whole nation that's been displaced. Like they're all refugees, they're scattered, and like they're trying to fit in other places, which becomes really difficult because you guys have been at each other's throat for the past 100 years.
You've got all this animosity that's built up, and now it's like, oh well, please take me in because I've got nowhere to live. So like you're going to be dealing with a lot of that.
Right, and there was literally certain nations that refused them, that turned them away.
Mm-hmm.
So you have that going on. So that you could do a lot of stuff with with politics in your campaign. Whether it's trying to help refugees, or trying to keep them out of your particular region. There's those things going on. The Treaty of Thronehold also put an end to creating Warforged, which were made for the last war.
And I mean, there's rumors that like, okay, well, the main forge has been shut down, but the technology is out there. What happens if somebody wants to turn it back on? What if there was a secret forge somewhere that's still inactive or still active?
What if the Warforged want more Warforged? There's a lot of things, and all of this really just stems from that concept of the last war, and it's going to send ripples and shockwaves through a lot of the campaigns that happen from this point on. The chances are your players could be veterans from the last war, displaced and looking for meaning for their life now. Not only that, like even if they're not, there tons of the NPCs are. Like, how do you deal with that many people, that many soldiers that have come home from war, and like literally the trade that maybe they were born and bred to doesn't really exist the way it did anymore. What do you do with them? How do they adapt to normal life?
What does the people of Karnath, what do they do with all of the undead that was in service? Are they dismissed? Are they destroyed? Is there a general who didn't want to give up that power, and well, it's not anywhere in the books, could totally be, a threat to deal with, because it's like, all right, well, I still have access to all these soldiers that don't need to eat, don't need to sleep.
Well, and speaking of, how many generals or military officers are left that aren't done fighting yet? Even though the treaty has been signed.
Right.
Literally at this point, like you said, they could be like a fifth generation family that's been fighting this war.
Right.
If they're lucky enough to have someone survive for each generation.
My father's 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 fathers started this war, and I will see it to its end.
Right, exactly. So it does create these interesting questions, and it does shape the world of Eberron. So the question is this something you want in your game? Are you using it in your game? Let us know in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can check out the articles over on nerdarchy.com.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.